The Ink Shepherd, a dark fantasy horror story. Prologue. The rules of the trade. There are 3 rules to being an ink shepherd. First asterisk, never read what you harvest. The words aren't for you. They belong to the client, or they belong to the house. Either way, they'll poison you if you try to keep them. Second asterisk, never take more than was agreed. Stories have weight. They have mass. Take too much and you'll carry it forever. Literally. Your bones will remember what your mind forgets. Third asterisk, never, ever let a story escape before delivery. Because stories don't just disappear. They find new hosts, new ways to be told. And some stories should never be told at all. I learned these rules from my predecessor, Marcus, who learned them from his predecessor, and so on back through 17 generations of shepherds. The lineage is old, older than the printing press, older than most written languages. We are the caretakers of narrative, the handlers of living story, the ones who harvest tales from those who no longer need them, or no longer want them, and deliver them to those willing to pay. My name is Silas Vane. I've been an ink shepherd for 7 years, and I broke all 3 rules in one night. Part 1. The client. The woman who walked into my shop was dying. I could tell by the way she moved, too carefully, as if her body was a container holding something fragile that might break if she walked too fast. She was maybe 40, with a kind of face that suggested she'd been beautiful once, before illness had carved away everything soft. My shop occupies a narrow building in the old quarter, wedged between a used bookstore and a tailor's that's been closed for renovations since I moved in. The sign above the door says simply, Vane and Amp, Associates, Acquisitions and Amp, Restoration. Most people walk past without noticing. Those who need what I offer. They always find the door. Mr. Vane. Her voice was steady despite her obvious pain. That's me. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. The office was small, cluttered with books, sealed boxes, and various tools of the trade. Brass implements that looked like surgical equipment. Inkwells filled with substances that weren't quite ink. A large leather-bound ledger that contained the names of every client I'd ever served. Please, sit. She lowered herself into the chair with a sharp intake of breath. I was told you could help me, that you acquire things, memories, stories. I'm a specialized archivist, I said, which was technically true. I work with narrative material. Personal histories, that sort of thing. Who referred you? Dr. Helena Marsh. She said you helped her father before he died. Helped him. Let go of something he'd been carrying. I remembered. Old man Marsh had been a soldier. World War II. He'd carried a story about something he'd done in a village in France, something that had eaten him alive for 50 years. I'd extracted it, sealed it, delivered it to a collector who specialized in wartime memories. The old man had died 3 weeks later, peaceful for the first time in decades. What is it you want to let go of? I asked. The woman, I didn't know her name yet, hadn't asked, looked at her hands. They were thin, almost skeletal. The kind of hands that spoke of chemotherapy and weight loss and treatments that weren't working. I'm dying, she said, unnecessarily. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have maybe 3 months. Maybe less. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've made peace with it. But there's something I need to do first. Something I need to get rid of before I go. She looked up, and her eyes were sharp despite the illness. There's a story inside me. It's been there since I was 7 years old. And it's rotting. Do you understand? It's like gangrene, but for the soul. I can feel it spreading, and I don't want to die with it still in me. I leaned forward. This was the important part, the assessment. Tell me about the story. When I was 7, something happened in my childhood home. Something in the basement. My parents told me I'd imagined it, that I'd had a nightmare. But I didn't imagine it. It was real, and I've carried it ever since, this memory, this knowledge of what I saw. And now that I'm dying, it's getting stronger, louder, like it knows its host is failing and it's trying to, I don't know, preserve itself. What did you see? Her hands clenched. I can't tell you. Not like this. Not with words. If I speak it, it'll find a way to spread, to infect. That's what it does. That's why I need you to take it. Pull it out of me like you'd pull out a tumor. Stories could be like that. Malignant. Growing. Consuming the host from the inside. I'd seen it before. The technical term was a parasitic narrative. They were rare, dangerous, and extremely valuable to the right collectors. The extraction process isn't pleasant, I warned. It's invasive, painful, and there's always a risk of complications. I'm dying anyway. Pain is a known quantity at this point. And the cost. I have money. Dr. Marsh said you'd be expensive. I'm prepared to pay whatever you ask. I named a figure. She didn't flinch. When can we start? She asked. Tomorrow night. Come at midnight. Bring nothing. Tell no one where you're going. I pulled out my ledger, opened to a blank page. I need your name. Catherine Vale. I wrote it down in the special ink, the kind that bound contracts, that made promises enforceable by forces older than law. Catherine Vale. Age. 41. Nature of the narrative to be extracted? She hesitated. Childhood trauma. Witness testimony of an event. Parasitic classification. I wrote it all down. Then I pushed the ledger toward her. Sign at the bottom. This confirms you're requesting extraction of your own free will, that you understand the risks, and that you agree to never speak of what I remove. She signed without reading the fine print. Most people did. Tomorrow at midnight, I repeated. Don't be late. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at her name in the ledger. Catherine Vale. There was something about that name. Something familiar. But I couldn't place it. I should have paid more attention to that feeling. Part 2. The extraction. The extraction chamber was in the basement. Naturally. All the real work happened below ground, where the walls were thick and the sound didn't carry. The room was circular, maybe 20 feet in diameter, with a chair in the center that looked uncomfortably like a dentist's chair crossed with medieval restraint equipment. The walls were lined with shelves holding bottles, jars, and sealed containers of various sizes. Each one held a story I'd extracted and hadn't yet delivered to its buyer. Catherine arrived at midnight exactly, punctual in the way of people who know their time is limited. She looked even worse than she had the day before. The disease was accelerating, as if it knew something was coming. Lie back in the chair, I instructed. This is going to feel strange. Don't fight it. The more you resist, the harder the extraction becomes. She settled into the chair without complaint. I fastened the restraints, leather straps around her wrists and ankles, not to hold her down forcibly, but to keep her from thrashing and hurting herself during the process. Close your eyes, I said. Think about the memory, the story you want me to take. Focus on it as clearly as you can. I pulled on gloves, thin leather, treated with specific oils and inscribed with symbols that prevented narrative contamination. Then I selected my tools: a brass stylus, a shallow bowl, and a bottle of ink that moved in its container like something alive. The process of harvesting a story is part surgery, part ritual, part art. You have to reach into the client's mind, not physically, but through a kind of psychic connection facilitated by the tools. You find the story, isolate it from surrounding memories, and carefully extract it, thread by thread, until the whole narrative comes free. I placed the stylus against Catherine's temple. She flinched but didn't pull away. "Remember," I whispered. "Show me what you saw." The connection formed immediately, faster than it should have. Usually there was resistance, a natural protective barrier that I had to carefully bypass. But Catherine's mind opened like a door that had been left unlocked. And I saw a basement, concrete walls, a single bare bulb casting shadows. 7-year-old Catherine at the top of the stairs, supposed to be in bed but awake, curious, drawn by sounds she didn't understand. Her father's voice, talking to someone. But the other voice wasn't human. It was too deep, too layered, like multiple voices speaking in imperfect synchronization. She crept down the stairs, saw her father standing in the center of the basement, surrounded by symbols drawn in something that looked like ash, and across from him, visible in the dim light, something that wore a man's shape but wasn't a man. Its skin was too smooth, too uniform, like a mannequin given animate life. Its eyes were wrong, too many pupils, arranged in patterns that hurt to look at. Her father was negotiating with it, trading something. Catherine couldn't hear the exact words, but she understood the essence. He was giving the thing a name. A story. His story. In exchange for success, wealth. Everything he'd achieved in his life after that night came from this bargain. The thing had looked up, seen Catherine on the stairs, smiled. A witness, it had said in that terrible multi-voice. How delightful, and so young. The memory will ferment beautifully. Her father had spun around, seen her, gone pale. "Catherine, go to bed." But it was too late. The thing had reached out, not physically, it never moved from its position, and touched her. Not her body, her mind, her memory of this moment. And it had done something, planted something, a seed that would grow for 34 years, feeding on her life, waiting for this moment, waiting for me. I yanked my hand back from Catherine's temple, breaking the connection. "Jesus Christ," I gasped. My heart was racing. What the hell was that? Catherine's eyes opened. She was crying. "Now you see. Now you understand why I need you to take it. It's not just a memory. It's a dormant thing. A story that wants to be told. And I'm not the one it wants to tell it through. Your father made a deal with something," I said. My hands were shaking. "Something old. Something that trades in narrative. He died 5 years ago. Successful businessman. Everyone said what a great man he was. No one knew about the deal. No one except me." She looked at me steadily. "And now can you take it? Can you pull it out?" I should have said no. Should have returned her money and sent her away. This wasn't a normal extraction. This was something that had been deliberately planted, cultivated, designed to spread. But I was young, arrogant. I thought I could handle it. "I can take it," I said. "But it's going to hurt. More than anything you've felt before." "Do it," she said. I positioned the stylus, opened the bowl. let the living ink pool in its center, waiting to receive the extracted narrative. And I reached in again. This time, I wasn't passive. I was hunting, looking for the story's edges, its boundaries, the places where it connected to Catherine's consciousness. It fought back. I could feel it resisting, trying to burrow deeper, trying to hide. But I was good at my job. Methodical. Careful. I found the first thread and pulled. Catherine screamed. The story came out like a tumor, black and writhing and wrong. It flowed from her mind through the stylus into the bowl, taking form in the living ink. I could see images forming in the liquid. The basement, the thing that wasn't human, the bargain, the moment of contamination. More threads. More screaming. I kept pulling. And then I felt something pull back. The story wasn't just being extracted. It was being transferred. From Catherine to the bowl, yes, but also to me. I tried to let go of the stylus. Couldn't. My hand was locked in place, and the narrative was flowing in reverse, climbing up my arm, entering my mind through the connection I'd opened. I saw Catherine's life play out in fast forward, saw her father's success built on stolen stories, saw the thing in the basement appear in her dreams, year after year, growing stronger, whispering to her, saw her develop cancer, not natural cancer, but a cancer caused by carrying a story that was never meant to be carried, that ate away at her from the inside because it needed to escape, needed to spread, needed to be told. And I saw what it wanted. It wanted a new host, someone who could carry it further, someone who had access to other minds, other stories, someone like an ink shepherd. I finally managed to wrench my hand away. The stylus clattered to the floor. The bowl tipped over, spilling black ink that moved like mercury, trying to flow back toward me. Catherine was unconscious in the chair, breathing shallowly. The extraction was complete. The story was out of her. But it was also in me now. I could feel it settling into my consciousness like a parasite finding a comfortable host. I'd broken the first rule, never read what you harvest. And I was about to break the second. Part 3. The infection. 3 days later, I started seeing them. The things that wore human shapes but weren't human. Walking the streets. Sitting in cafes. Standing in corners of my shop when I thought I was alone. I'd blink and they'd be gone. But the afterimage remained. That too smooth skin. Those wrong eyes with too many pupils arranged in patterns that made my head hurt. Catherine Vale had died peacefully in her sleep 2 days after the extraction. Her obituary said she'd succumbed to pancreatic cancer, surrounded by family. It didn't mention that she'd spent her last conscious hours screaming in my extraction chamber. It didn't mention that the story I'd pulled from her had fought back like a living thing. The story I'd taken from her was in a sealed bottle on one of my shelves. Standard amber glass, wax seal, containment sigils inscribed in silver around the neck. By all measures, it was properly secured. The liquid inside didn't move, didn't pulse, didn't show any signs of consciousness. But it was also in my head. I could feel it moving around in there, exploring, making itself comfortable like a house guest who decided to stay permanently. At night, I dreamed of the basement, of her father making the deal, of the thing that had touched Catherine's mind and left its seed growing for 34 years, waiting for this exact moment, waiting for me. And in the dreams, the thing spoke to me. "You're special," it said in that multi-layered voice, like a choir singing slightly out of sync. "You handle stories for a living. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable? Most humans just consume narratives. They read them, hear them, forget them. But you extract them. You handle raw narrative material. You're a conduit, a vessel, and I've been waiting so long for one of you to come along. What are you? I asked in the dream. I was standing in that basement again, 7-year-old Catherine's perspective, looking at the thing that wore a man's shape. I am narrative made conscious. I am the story that tells itself. I am old, Sheperd, older than your house, older than your profession. I have existed since the first human learned to lie, to imagine, to tell tales around fires to keep the darkness at bay. You're a demon. It laughed, a sound like pages turning in an empty room, like ink spreading across paper, like the whisper of words you can't quite hear but know are important. Demons are stories too. Everything is story. The universe is narrative all the way down. Matter tells the story of how it moves through space. Time tells the story of cause and effect. Consciousness is just the story the brain tells about itself. It moved closer, its face shifting, features rearranging themselves into patterns that almost made sense but never quite resolved into anything human. And I am very good at spreading. I woke up covered in sweat, my hands covered in ink. Not my special ink, regular ink, the kind that shouldn't be anywhere near my bedroom. And on my arms, written in my own handwriting but in letters I didn't remember forming. Let me out. I washed it off with shaking hands. But the next night there was more. On my chest, my legs, covering my skin in a spiderweb of text. I need to spread. I need to be told. You know the rules. Deliver me. I started wearing long sleeves. Stopped looking in mirrors. The text appeared in places I couldn't see. My back, my shoulder blades, the back of my neck. Clients who came for consultations would stare at me strangely, and I knew they could see words I couldn't, messages written in places I couldn't read. The third rule: never let a story escape before delivery. But I hadn't sealed this one properly. Hadn't contained it at all, really. I'd let it infect me during the extraction, let it flow from Catherine's mind through the stylus, through my hand, into my consciousness. And now it wanted out, not into a bottle, not into a buyer's collection, but into the world, into other minds, spreading like a virus through the medium of narrative. I tried to work. Had 3 scheduled extractions that week. The first 2 went fine. Routine harvests of childhood memories someone wanted removed before dementia took them anyway. Clean, simple, no complications. The third client was different. He was a middle-aged man, nervous, with a kind of energy that suggested he wasn't used to dealing with people like me. He sat across from my desk and fidgeted with his wedding ring while explaining what he wanted removed. "It's a memory from 15 years ago," he said. "An affair I had. My wife never found out, and I never told her. But I can't stop thinking about it. It's eating me alive. The guilt, the secrecy, all of it. I want it gone. Standard stuff. I'd done dozens of extractions like this. Remove the memory, seal it, client goes home lighter. Simple. But when I looked at him with that new awareness the entity had given me, that ability to see stories as living things, I saw something move. Not in him. In me. The entity was reaching out, trying to use the connection I'd established for the extraction to jump from my mind to his. It wanted a new host, someone who carried guilt, shame, secret narratives. Perfect fertilizer for it to grow. I jerked back from the desk. "I can't help you." "What?" "But I made an appointment." "I'm sorry. I'm not taking new clients right now. Health reasons." I stood up, moved toward the door. "I'll refund your deposit. I apologize for the inconvenience." He left confused and angry. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it, breathing hard. The entity had nearly spread, had nearly used me as a vector to infect someone else, and I'd been completely unaware until the last second. How many times had I done this already? How many clients had I seen since Catherine? Had I infected them all? I pulled out my ledger, flipped through recent entries. 5 clients in the past 2 weeks. 5 people who had sat across from my desk, who I'd connected with psychically for consultations and preliminary assessments. 5 potential vectors. I did what I should have done immediately. I called the house. The House of Shepherds isn't a physical location. It's more of a network, a collective of practitioners scattered across the world, all following the same rules, all serving the same purpose. We have contacts, resources, emergency protocols, and we have cleaners. Marcus, my predecessor, arrived at my shop at dawn the next morning. He was 70, white-haired, with hands that shook slightly from age, but eyes that were still sharp, still assessing, still measuring every detail. "You broke the first rule," he said without preamble. He hadn't even taken off his coat. "I can see it in you. You read what you harvested. It wasn't intentional. It never is. But you're contaminated now. And if what you're describing is accurate, if this really is a first-generation entity, then we have a serious problem." He walked around my shop, examining bottles on shelves, checking seals with practiced fingers. "Most stories are dead things. Frozen. Captured. You put them in a bottle and they stay there, inert, waiting to be delivered to collectors who appreciate rare narratives. But first-gens, they're still living, still growing, and they can jump hosts. So what do I do?" He pulled a worn leather case from his coat, something I'd never seen before, though I'd trained under him for 2 years. Inside were tools that made my brass stylus and living ink look like children's toys. Instruments that looked like they belonged in a museum, or a torture chamber, or both. Some were clearly ancient, tarnished silver with inscriptions in languages I didn't recognize. Others were more recent but no less disturbing. Hypodermic needles with symbols etched into the metal, scalpels with blades that seemed to bend light. "This is going to hurt worse than anything you've done before," Marcus said, laying out the tools on my desk with the care of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. "Because you're not extracting from a client. You're extracting from yourself. And the entity knows you. It's been inside your head for days now. It knows your thoughts, your fears, your defenses. It will fight extraction with everything it has. Can't you do it? You're more experienced. No, it's inside you. Only you can reach it. The connection between a shepherd and a story they're carrying is unique, individual. If I tried to extract it, I'd just be cutting blind. You need to feel your way through your own consciousness, find where it's nested, and pull it out carefully." He looked at me with something like pity. "I'm here to guide you and to make sure that if you fail, it doesn't spread further. And if I can't pull it out—" Marcus's expression was grim. He didn't need to say it. I could see it in his eyes. "I've done this 3 times before," he said quietly. 3 other shepherds who got contaminated by first-gens. 2 of them we couldn't save. The entity had integrated too deeply. Separating it would have destroyed their minds completely. So I made sure the story died with them. Permanently. He meant murder. Professional, necessary, regrettable murder. The kind of hard choice that defined the older generation of shepherds who'd learned their trade when the house was less regulated, when the rules were enforced with blood rather than contracts. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," I said. "Let's hope," Marcus agreed, but he didn't sound hopeful. The self-extraction took 8 hours. Marcus guided me through the process, coaching me on how to separate my own thoughts from the invasive narrative, how to recognize the difference between my memories and the story's memories, how to pull the foreign consciousness out of my own mind thread by thread. We set up in the extraction chamber. Me in the chair I usually used for clients, Marcus standing beside me with the ancient tools laid out on a tray like we were in an operating theatre, which, in a sense, we were. "Close your eyes," Marcus said. "Go deep, past your surface thoughts, past your immediate memories, down to the foundational level where your sense of self lives." I did. It was like diving into dark water. The deeper I went, the less distinct things became. Memories blurred together. The boundary between me and not me became fuzzy. And there, coiled around my sense of identity like a vine around a tree trunk, was the entity. It was excruciating, like performing surgery on your own brain while remaining conscious. I could feel the story resisting, burrowing deeper, trying to hide in corners of my psyche I didn't even know existed. Childhood memories I'd forgotten, dreams I'd had years ago, private thoughts I'd never shared with anyone. The entity had spread its roots through all of it. And all the while, it whispered, "You need me. I'm part of you now. Think of all I can teach you. Think of what we could do together. You harvest stories. Imagine if you could become them, wear them like skin, experience centuries of narrative all at once. I can give you that. Don't lock me away. Let me stay. Let me show you." "Shut up," I growled through gritted teeth. My hands were clenched on the armrests of the chair. Marcus was doing something with the tools. I could feel them working, could sense him establishing connections, opening pathways for extraction. But it was still my mind, my effort, my will against the entity's will. "I'm the first story ever told," it continued, relentless. "I'm the reason your profession exists. Without things like me, there would be no need for shepherds. You should be grateful, reverent. I'm offering you knowledge, power, the ability to see narratives as they truly are, living, breathing things. You've already felt it, haven't you? The way you can see stories moving through people now. That's my gift to you. You're a parasite, nothing more. Parasite, symbiote, teacher, student. These are all just stories we tell about relationships. The truth is more complex. I don't want to destroy you, Silas. I want to enhance you. Together, we could reshape the entire profession. We could teach other shepherds to see what you see. We could revolutionize. I'm going to seal you in a bottle and drop you in the ocean. You can't. I'm already spreading. Every time you think about me, you give me strength. Every time you remember Catherine, or her father, or the basement, you feed me. And you've been remembering constantly, haven't you? I'm in every thought now, part of your cognitive architecture. Remove me, and you remove part of yourself. It was right. That was the terrifying part. The more I tried to isolate it, the more I became aware of how deeply it had integrated itself into my consciousness. It wasn't just sitting in my mind like a foreign object. It had become part of how I thought, how I perceived, how I understood narrative. Removing it would leave holes, gaps, possibly permanent damage. "Marcus," I said, my voice strained, "I don't think I can do this. It's too deep. It's part of me now. You can. You're stronger than it is. You're trained for this." His voice was steady, reassuring, the voice of a teacher who believed in his student even when the student had stopped believing in themselves. Find its core, the central narrative. Everything else is just branches. Cut the trunk and the branches die. I reached deeper, past my memories of childhood, past my training with Marcus, past everything I thought of as me, into the space where stories lived before they were told, before they were even thought. And there it was, the core of the entity. Not a creature, not a demon, just a pattern, a way of thinking that perpetuated itself by being thought about. The original meme, before anyone knew what memes were. An idea so compelling it couldn't help but spread, couldn't help but be retold, couldn't help but infect. It was beautiful, in a terrible way. Elegant, perfect. A narrative structure so recursive, so self-referential, that it created its own meaning simply by existing. The snake eating its own tail. The story about stories about stories. I understood why Catherine's father had been willing to bargain with it. Why people throughout history had made deals with entities like this. They weren't evil. They were just optimization algorithms for narrative propagation, evolved over millennia to be as infectious as possible. And I was about to kill it. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Then I grabbed it. It screamed, not with sound, but with meaning. Pure semantic agony. The death cry of a story that knew it was about to be silenced. And I pulled. The thing that came out of my mind and into the containment vessel was black, writhing, angry. It looked like ink but moved like a living creature, tentacles of narrative reaching out, pressing against the glass walls of its prison, trying to find cracks, weaknesses, any way to escape or spread. Marcus sealed it immediately, cap on tight. Hot wax dripped over the seal while murmuring words in Latin, then silver symbols inscribed over the wax that glowed faintly before fading to dull grey. The vessel went still. The black liquid settled. Whatever consciousness had been moving inside became dormant, trapped in stasis. "It's done," Marcus said. "You did it." I collapsed in my chair, exhausted beyond measure. My mind felt empty, scoured clean, like a room that had been thoroughly disinfected, everything personal and unique stripped away to leave only sterile surfaces. "What now?" I managed to ask. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, emotionless, like the extraction had taken more than just the entity. "Now I take this to the vault. It'll be stored with the other firstgens we've captured over the centuries, locked away where it can't spread." He picked up the bottle carefully, cradling it like it might explode if jostled. "You got lucky, Silas. Most shepherds don't survive contamination by something this old. You should be dead. Or mad. Or both. I feel dead. That's normal. You'll recover." But he didn't sound certain. "The extraction process is traumatic. You pulled out something that had integrated deeply with your consciousness. You're going to feel off balance for a while. Disconnected. Empty. How long? Days. Weeks. For some people, forever." He looked at me seriously. "You've learned something important today. The rules exist for a reason. They're not suggestions. They're survival protocols. Follow them, or die. There's no middle ground. I understand. Do you?" He looked at the bottle in his hands. "Because this thing told you secrets, didn't it? Showed you things. And part of you wants to remember, wants to know more. That's the hook. That's how they get you. Curiosity is the vector for narrative infection. The desire to know, to understand, to experience more stories. That's what makes you a good shepherd. But it's also what makes you vulnerable." He was right. Even now, exhausted and traumatized, I wanted to know more. Wanted to understand what the entity was, where it came from, what it really wanted. The extraction had removed it from my mind, but it had left behind a shape, a void where knowledge had been, and that void ached to be filled. "Fight that urge," Marcus said, "every time. Or next time, I won't be here to guide you out. I'll be here to make sure you don't infect anyone else. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "Yes. I hope so." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Take a week off. No clients. No extractions. Just rest. Let your mind heal. And Silas, burn your ledger page for Catherine Vale. Burn any notes you took. Destroy every physical trace of that case. The entity came through her, and anything connected to her is potentially contaminated." After he left with the bottle, I sat alone in my extraction chamber, surrounded by hundreds of sealed stories on shelves, and wondered how many of them were sleeping entities waiting for a careless shepherd to let them out. The walls felt closer than before, the room darker, and I couldn't shake the feeling that despite the extraction, despite Marcus's assurances, despite the empty scorched place in my mind where the entity had been, something was still watching. Part 4. The Aftermath. 3 weeks passed. I tried to return to normal work, harvesting memories from clients, sealing them properly, delivering them to buyers. But something had changed. I could see them now. The stories inside people. Not just the ones they wanted to remove, but all of them. Every memory, every narrative they'd ever been told or told themselves. They glowed in my vision like bioluminescent plankton in dark water, and some of them moved. I was in a coffee shop when I saw it clearly for the first time. A man in his 30s, reading a newspaper. Nothing unusual. Except in my enhanced vision, I could see stories crawling over his skin like insects. Personal histories, cultural narratives, the tales he'd been told about who he was and what he should believe. And one of them was wrong. It moved differently from the others. Purposefully. It had the same black, writhing quality as Catherine's entity. A parasite wearing the disguise of a normal memory. The man looked up, met my eyes, and smiled. His pupils multiplied. Just for a second. Too many eyes arranged in patterns that hurt to look at. I left the coffee shop immediately. Over the next few days, I saw more. People on the street with stories that moved wrong. Clients who came to my shop carrying entities disguised as memories. Even Marcus, when he called to check on me, had something in his voice, a quality that suggested he was being watched, that something was listening through him. The entity hadn't been alone, or it had been spreading for longer than we thought. Or I was still infected, still contaminated, and everything I was seeing was just another trick, another layer of the narrative it had left behind. I couldn't tell any more, couldn't distinguish between reality and the story's influence. That was the truly terrifying part. I'd successfully extracted it. Marcus had confirmed the extraction was complete, but I still carried the awareness it had given me, the ability to see stories as living things. Was that a gift, or another form of infection? I consulted the old texts, the founding documents of the house, records going back centuries, and I found references to others like me. Shepherds who had survived contamination by first-generation entities but were changed afterward. Some had gone mad. Some had become better at their work, able to identify parasitic narratives before extraction. And some had disappeared, their fates unrecorded. One passage struck me particularly. The shepherds who survive first contact often become watchers. They see what others cannot. They guard against infections that would otherwise spread unnoticed. But they walk a thin line between guardian and vector. Watch them closely. Trust them cautiously. And if they show signs of hosting rather than hunting, end them quickly. Asterisk. I was being watched. I'd known it since Marcus left. Subtle surveillance. Other shepherds checking on me, evaluating whether I was still safe or had become a threat. Fair enough. I'd do the same in their position. But it left me isolated, alone with the knowledge that the world was full of living stories, some benign, some malignant, all of them spreading, mutating, evolving. And I was one of the few people who could see them. Part 5. The next client. She walked into my shop on a Tuesday afternoon. Young, maybe 25, with a kind of nervous energy that suggested she knew she shouldn't be here but couldn't stay away. "Are you Silas Vane?" she asked. "That's me. I need your help. I have a story I need to get rid of. Something I was told as a child. It's been growing inside me ever since, and I think it's going to kill me if I don't get it out." I looked at her with my enhanced vision, saw the stories crawling over her skin. Most were normal. Memories, experiences, the mundane narratives of a normal life. But one was different. It moved purposefully, hungrily, and when I looked closer, I saw its structure, recognized its pattern. It was another seed, another one of Catherine's entity's offspring, planted, cultivated, waiting to spread through me to other hosts. The entity hadn't been sealed away. It had been reproducing. Catherine's father had made a deal decades ago, and the payment was still being collected, in the form of infected stories spreading through the population, one host at a time, slowly building towards something larger. "Tell me about the story," I said carefully. "When I was 7, my father told me about a deal he made, about trading something important for success. And ever since then, I've been carrying it. This memory that doesn't feel like mine. This story that wants to be told. And I see things now. Creatures that wear human shapes but aren't human. Do you see them too?" I did. I saw them all the time now. Standing in corners. Watching. Waiting. "I can help you," I said. And I could. I'd extract her story, seal it properly, add it to my collection, just like I was supposed to. But I'd also be exposing myself to another infection, another piece of the larger entity, and each exposure strengthened my ability to see them while weakening my resistance to their influence. The rules existed for a reason, but the rules hadn't anticipated this. A first-generation entity that had learned to play the long game, to use shepherds as vectors rather than victims, to turn our profession into a delivery system for its spread. "When can we start?" she asked. "Tomorrow night," I said automatically. "Midnight." After she left, I sat in my office and tried to decide what to do. I could refuse her, send her away, break the chain of infection. But if I did, she'd find another shepherd, and they'd be exposed, and the entity would spread anyway. Or I could extract her story, contain it, add it to my growing collection of sealed offspring, build a library of infections that I kept locked away, never delivered, never spread. But how long could I do that before I became a reservoir rather than a guardian? Before I was carrying so many fragments of the entity that it reconstituted itself inside me? Or, and this was the thought that scared me most, I could do what Marcus would tell me to do if he knew the truth. I could destroy myself and everyone the entity had infected. Burn down my shop with all the sealed stories inside. End the chain completely. But there were so many infected now. I'd seen them on the streets, in coffee shops. Everywhere I looked, I saw people carrying seeds, stories that would bloom and spread and infect others. I couldn't kill them all. I could barely save myself. Epilogue. The choice. I'm writing this down because someone needs to know. My name is Silas Vane. I'm an ink shepherd, and I'm patient zero for an outbreak of living stories that threatens to infect the entire narrative infrastructure of human consciousness. The entity I extracted from Catherine Vale wasn't alone. It was part of a larger pattern, a network of first-generation entities that have been spreading for decades, using shepherds as unwitting vectors. They plant themselves in clients. We extract them. We get infected. We spread them further. It's brilliant, really. Parasites that have learned to weaponize the very profession designed to contain them. I have 3 choices. 1 asterisk, continue working. Keep extracting, keep sealing, keep collecting infected stories in my basement until I'm carrying so many fragments that I become the entity I'm trying to contain. 2 asterisk, stop working. Close my shop. Refuse clients. Let the infected find other shepherds who don't yet know what I know. Prolong the inevitable while the outbreak spreads. 3 asterisk, burn it all down. Destroy every sealed story in my possession, including myself. End this node of the infection, knowing that others still exist, but at least I won't be spreading it further. I've been standing in my extraction chamber for 3 hours now. The bottles and jars line the walls, each containing a story I've harvested. And I can see them now, really see them. The ones that are just memories, frozen and dead, and the ones that are alive, pressing against their containment, waiting for a chance to spread. I'm holding a lighter. The entire basement smells of lamp oil. I've spent the last day preparing. Marcus would approve. He'd call it responsible, necessary, the kind of hard choice that defines a true shepherd. But there's a part of me, and I can't tell if it's really me or the infection talking, that wonders, what if the entities aren't the enemy? What if they're just the next evolution of story? Living narratives that don't need humans to tell them, that tell themselves, that spread and grow and adapt. Maybe we're not under attack. Maybe we're being upgraded. The young woman comes tomorrow at midnight. I've already made my decision about whether to keep the appointment. But I'm not going to tell you what I decided. Because that's the thing about stories, isn't it? The best ones leave you wondering. The best ones infect you with possibility, with uncertainty, with the need to know what happens next. And if you're reading this, wondering whether I burned down my shop or kept working, wondering whether the outbreak was contained or spread, wondering whether I'm still human or something else wearing a shepherd's skin, then you're carrying the story now. It's in your head, growing, spreading, waiting. Welcome to the profession. Remember the rules. First asterisk, never read what you harvest. Too late for that. Second asterisk, never take more than was agreed. You've already taken everything I had to give. Third asterisk, never let a story escape before delivery. Consider this delivered. Sweet dreams, Sheperd. The end. Or is it?